Lee's Summit, Missouri, was a study in contrast, cloaked in a deceivingly mundane facade. The sun-drenched, serene streets, lined with matured maple trees and picture-perfect suburban houses, were in jarring discordance with the unspoken malevolence that seeped from the cracks in its perfection. Adrian Miller, a quiet man past the crest of middle age, stood at the city limits, squinting against the sunlight that spilled across the sleepy town. His eyes, vessels of profound compassion and hardened resolve, mirrored a silent tale of personal loss, yet they held a glimmer of defiance. The untimely demise of his parents in his fragile youth had left a void in him, a void filled now with a fervor for justice, a burning need to extend his hand towards those swallowed by the darkness of their circumstances. In the name of journalism, a profession chosen as much for its promise of ink-stained truth as for its role as a beacon for the lost, he stepped into the deceptive calm of Lee's Summit. His first stop, the local coffee shop, a hub of whispered rumors and local news. "New face in town?" a waitress asked, wiping down the counter with a worn-out rag. Adrian nodded, his gaze lingering on the checkered tiles, his voice a mere rustle of dried autumn leaves. "Writing a piece on local businesses." The words perked up ears, curiosity bubbling beneath the surface of casual smiles. As if on cue, the townsfolk began to engage him, their chatter painting the narrative of a thriving town with booming local businesses, particularly the Lee Industrial Complex. It stood as a monument to the town's progress, a colossal, looming figure at the edge of the horizon. But beneath the praise and the admiration for the company, there lingered an undercurrent of unease, hints of darker truths hidden behind the facade of prosperity. In conversations cloaked in niceties, he discerned coded messages of late-night transports, barred warehouse sections, and a strange ironclad hierarchy within the company. He engaged them with a generosity that was as subtle as it was disarming, allowing the seeds of trust to be sown. He left the coffee shop with the aftertaste of bitter brew and ominous inklings. As night descended, he ventured towards the outskirts of town, where the silhouette of the Lee Industrial Complex marred the star-studded sky. It stood there, shrouded in a darkness deeper than the night itself, whispering sinister secrets to the silent wind. His journey into the underbelly of Lee's Summit had begun. As he retreated into the night, leaving the gargantuan beast of industry behind him, he knew the sun-dappled streets would never look the same again. Unseen machinations had started to turn. A cosmic horror was waiting to be unraveled, and he was ready to pull at the threads. As dawn unfurled its golden fingers over the tranquil town of Lee's Summit, Adrian found himself standing at the gates of the monolithic Lee Industrial Complex. The austere edifice seemed to brood beneath the weight of the whispered secrets it harbored, dwarfing everything around it with a silent, ominous authority. In a display of his innate, understated charm, he had secured an invitation from a mid-level manager at the complex, a man named Clarence, whose puffy eyes hinted at countless sleepless nights. "The heart of the town beats here, Adrian," Clarence said, leading him through a labyrinth of clanging machinery and purposeful workers. His voice reverberated with a forced enthusiasm, but his eyes held a quiet desperation, like a bird with clipped wings. As they ventured deeper into the industrial behemoth, he began to sense a disconcerting rhythm beneath the clamor of the factory floor. The synchronized beating of hammers, the hiss of steam, and the drone of the assembly line sang an eerie, discordant melody that seemed to resonate with an unseen presence. Draped in the cloak of a curious journalist, he probed with carefully crafted questions, scratching just beneath the surface of the industrial veneer. He was led through myriad corridors, shown shiny machines, and introduced to solemn-faced workers, their brows creased with more than just exhaustion. Amid the rehearsed smiles and polished speeches, he found fragments of the truth he sought, strange symbols etched in discreet corners, workers speaking in hushed tones about the hallowed chamber, barred to all but a few, and cryptic references to rituals conducted under the guise of employee motivation sessions. His evening was spent in the company of Clarence in a local tavern. Amid the smoky air and clinking glasses, the man's facade began to crumble under the influence of strong spirits. His stories, once filled with praise for the Lee Industrial Complex, took a darker turn. He spoke of his colleagues disappearing only to return different, hollow, as though something essential had been leached from their beings. "Something's not right, Adrian," he murmured, his eyes reflecting the flickering tavern lights, mirroring the chaotic dance of fear and resignation. Adrian, listening intently, felt the cold hand of dread grip his heart. The whispered rumors, the coded messages, and now Clarence's fear-laden confessions were all pieces of a horrifying jigsaw puzzle slowly coming together. The town's thriving heartbeat seemed to echo the rhythm of a much darker, alien drum, and he found himself on the precipice of an abyss of cosmic horror. The secrets of Lee's summit were about to be unearthed, and he could only pray he would survive the revelation. Lee's summit was engulfed in an unnatural stillness as Adrian, sleepless and haunted, found himself staring at the ominous outline of the Lee industrial complex under the silver sheen of the moon. He knew he had brushed against the veil of something profound and terrifying, something that challenged his understanding of reality. A clandestine meeting had been arranged with one of the workers from the complex, a janitor who claimed to hold the keys to the truth. In a hushed corner of an abandoned church, beneath the cold scrutiny of silent saints, the janitor, a frail man named Edgar, unveiled the unfathomable. "The complex? It's a temple, you see," he whispered, his eyes darting to the shadowed corners of the church, his voice barely rising above the spectral echo of past sermons. "A temple dedicated to an ancient one, a deity from beyond the stars." His words painted a surreal picture involving clandestine rituals enacted deep within the complex restricted zones. The workers were more than just laborers. They were unwitting participants in a grand cosmic orchestra, their toil a tribute to an otherworldly entity that promised wealth and power in return. He spoke of the hallowed chamber, a sacred space dedicated to this entity, a place where the veil between realities was stretched thin, where the tangible world touched the cold, infinite abyss of the cosmos. The rituals enacted there were not of this world. They warped time and space, bending minds to the will of the ancient entity. Edgar's revelations, delivered with the fervor of a doomed prophet, spun a tale that shook Adrian's reality, tying the knot of dread in his gut tighter. The town's prosperity, the booming business, and the workers' hollow gazes were all a part of this cosmic dance, the puppetry of an unknowable, ancient horror. As he left the church, he carried the weight of Edgar's revelations. The town, once bathed in innocence, now pulsed with an alien rhythm. His journalistic pursuit had evolved into a desperate quest to untangle the town from the clutches of this cosmic horror. The story was no longer just ink on paper. It had seeped into his psyche, transforming his reality. The shadows were deeper, the whispers louder, and the veil between his world and the abyss thinner. He was no longer just a spectator, but an unwilling actor on a stage set by cosmic puppeteers. The final act was near, and escape was the only victory he dared to hope for. The air of Lee's summit held a chilling note as dawn broke, its pale light a mocking contrast to the dark revelations that clouded Adrian's mind. The specter of the cosmic horror that haunted the Lee industrial complex had seeped into every alley, every home, every soul. His journey was no longer toward the truth, but away from the gaping maw of the abyss. He found Clarence in the tavern, drowned in spirits and fear. The man's jittery eyes met his, recognizing their shared terror. "You know, don't you?" Clarence whispered, his voice a ghost in the smoky air. With a nod, Adrian confirmed his unspoken suspicion. They spoke in hushed tones, words swirling in the air like a dance of fallen leaves. Plans were crafted, not for heroic confrontation, but for desperate escape. They were not warriors destined to defeat the cosmic entity, but men caught in its cosmic web, striving for survival. In the dead of night, under a sky void of stars, they embarked on their flight. Adrian could feel the unseen gaze of the ancient entity, its presence woven into the fabric of the town, watching them. Every shadow held a whisper of dread, every silence screamed of hidden watchers. But they pressed on, driven by a primal instinct to survive. As they crossed the town's boundary, a cacophony shattered the silence. The ground beneath them quivered, The air vibrated with an alien frequency, and an unnatural wind whipped around them, carrying the echoes of an otherworldly roar. His gaze shot back towards the town. The Lee industrial complex stood like a monstrous specter, bathed in an ethereal glow, an unholy beacon connecting the terrestrial with the celestial. The veil had been lifted, the cosmic horror bared, its monstrous beauty a grotesque parody of reality. Then, as abruptly as it began, the chaos receded. The entity retreated back into its celestial lair, the spectral light waned, and the town fell into an uncanny stillness once again. With the first rays of dawn painting the sky in hues of hope, Adrian and Clarence found themselves on the other side of the nightmare. But even as the physical distance from Lee's summit grew, the psychological scars of their encounter with the unknown remained. The echoes of the cosmic horror reverberated in their minds, a cruel remnant of the price paid for peering beyond the veil of reality. As the story concluded, Adrian found himself forever changed. He had tasted the dread of cosmic horror, seen the dance of an ancient entity. His world was irrevocably altered, the line between the mundane and the horrific forever blurred. Lee's summit receded in the rearview mirror of his life, but its haunting memory was etched deep in the annals of his existence, a terrifying testament of the time he stood on the precipice of the abyss. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed our content, show your support with a like and subscribe, and stay notified by hitting the bell icon. Expect more cosmic horror from Eldritch Tales Factory, and feel free to explore our other stories. See you in the next video.